Warhammer 6th Edition Fantasy Battles. Rules of the Siege. Look at this beast of a Castle Gallagher that the Bromans are trying to tumble today. Now, you're a gamer, so I don't really need to tell you that this comes from the HeroScape line of toys, originally sized for roughly 32mm figures. We're going to be using 15mm figures, which I think works. I don't know if this product would work for 32mm figures. Because as you can see from the rules, when you position troops on the castle walls, you want your defenders to be back behind the battlements to provide room for when the attackers climb and scale the walls, either via grappling hooks or ladders, there's room for them to stand in front, and this is where the bulk of the fighting will take place. As you can see from ours, with 15mm figures on, I think these are number 10 washers, you've got plenty of space, even on the narrow parts. Remember that our castle is representative of a castle with crenellations. We don't have battlements on the top of these castle walls. You can put some up. The product does come with really tall ones. But for visibility purposes and speed and ease of play, we're going to take those off, and we're just going to assume that our representation lacks those battlements, but they're really there. The other thing we're going to assume is that these black cases, this is actually like a counting bead. I use these for elevation markers for some of my aerial combat games, my ships in the sky. Today, they're going to serve the purpose of cauldrons of boiling hot sand or oil or something that the defenders can use to topple down onto the attackers, because that's going to play a key role in the defense of Castle Gallagher. Couple of other things to be aware of. Our walls are broken into 5 sections. One section here, one section here. We've got a gatehouse. Again, the actual gatehouse is going to be extra tall. It's going to be higher and it basically can't be assaulted by the guys on the ground. We're already looking at like 5 or 6 stories tall just to get to the top of the walls. The gatehouse would be taller. You can move through it, and we will put some defenders on top, but we're going to class that as a tower. We'll leave it at the same size, again, for ease and speed of play and visualization, but we do have 2 more wall sections over here on this side. One over here on the right, and then one on this side. And these wall sections can be scaled by scaling ladders, which I've made just out of popsicle sticks, and I cut some shish kebab skewers down to size, and I've got a total of 4 of those for the attackers. Remember that the Bromans are coming in. They suffered a terrible defeat last night when the Vampire Lord Blanc, here he is in his tighty whities and bat robe, he launched a sallying spoiler raid that negated the advantage of the cannons. There are some wonderful rules in Warhammer 6th Edition for using cannons to blast a castle to smithereens. There are chances for a misfire, but in order to keep this competitive, I basically ran that encounter just to get the cannons off the table so we can see how a physical assault of the castle would work. Of course, the weakest spot in the castle walls is the gatehouse here. And to deal with that, the Bromans have gone to some nearby woods and they've cut a nice, see the little log? There's a nice little battering ram. Not quite a battering ram, it's a log ram. Warhammer Fantasy Battles has 2 different kinds of ways to crack the gate. They have this kind of log ram, and then they have a battering ram, which think grand, but it's Warhammer, so it's going to be on a much smaller scale. The kind it's got a little house that you stand in and swing the log back and forth to attack the gate. We're going to get into all the rules for all of these individual things here in just a moment, but I wanted to just kind of talk about the difference in what we're representing and how a few of these things work before we get in, so that you understand how the battle is going. And I think the rest of this, we can just deploy our troops. Oh, no, there's one last thing I should talk about, and that's the backfield. See back here behind the walls of the castle, very shadowy, very dark, very spooky, which is appropriate for our Vampire Lord. There will be 2 reserve forces back there. Let me back up a step. Units will occupy one section of the wall, and they can move back and forth between sections, including this tall gatehouse. But they have to have room to move by, and it's going to be a full, well, I mean, it's not really going to be a march order. There will be some confusion if that happens. It does take a full move to get from the bottom down here, the road doesn't mean anything, up to the top of the wall. There are, again, we'll assume plenty of different ways to get from down in the courtyard up to the top of the wall, which presents the Bromans with a couple of different options. If they can crack the gate, then they can flood inside and they can just clamber up on the wall from the inside. Of course, they'll have to beat the defenders down in the courtyard. The other thing they can do is use the ladders to scale, and we'll give 2 ladders to each of the units. It takes 4 figures to carry a ladder, and then it takes 4 figures minimum to carry this log. If you have 8, then when you batter the wall, you'll do, it's a little confusing. I'm going to have some questions on this. I'm going to tell you how I'm doing it, but I'm not the first guy to play Warhammer Fantasy Battles 6th edition. I'm certainly not the first guy to play the Siege rules, but I haven't seen a whole lot of videos of this on YouTube, and I haven't seen a whole lot of discussion of it. So there's a couple of things that got short shrift in the rules. I'm going to have to make a couple of rulings. I want to know how you guys dealt with this when you've used these rules in your own games, and if you think that what I've done here is appropriate. We're really looking for a nice, fair fight, but really we're looking to experiment and see. I don't think these rules work great for skirmish fights, based on the results of my last, and that could have been scenario design. But I do want to see how they work with Castle Siege, because this is a sorely underutilized aspect of our miniature wargaming hobby. You just don't see a whole lot of attacking castles in this kind of step-by-step, what are the different ways that you can attack a castle. Now, I will point out, before we get started, there are no rules for sapping and mining, because this is not really a siege. This is more of an assault scenario. I am, with respect to the campaign, only going to allow the Bromans to use the forces that they have remaining. And again, we have the forces remaining for the undead, but I will be supplementing the undead with a couple of things. Now, just as the Bromans have supplemented their forces with these ladders and this log, the undead are going to add, and it occurred to me kind of after the fact, that I never used any missile troops with the undead. Well, today we are. We are going to put 1 unit of archers up here in the gatehouse. And so we are going to be doing some archer duels with the guys down on the ground, with the guys up here in the gatehouse. And of course, on a turn where the archers, oops, stand back up there, buddy. With the archers, it takes 2 of them to operate one of these cauldrons. And when the cauldron spills down below, I just want to talk about that real quick. Basically, you drop a 3-inch template. Now, in my case, it's going to be an 1.5-inch template. But where we have guys attacking the castle, these archers, instead of firing, they are going to be dumping the oil. And the oil will hit 9 figures, basically a 3x3 set of figures. And each of those figures takes an automatic strength 5 hit. Really deadly stuff. Takes a full turn to replace, so you can only use that every other turn. I'm really eager to get started, so let's just throw some figures on the table and talk about the strategy that the Bromans are bringing to try to crack the Gallagher Fortress and put to an end the terror of the Vampire Lord Blanc once and for all. The Bromans are limited to just 60 spearmen, and unfortunately, I only own 45 or thereabouts. You can see we had to press a couple of these peasant figures into position as spear guys. I got 45 on the table right now. There's 1 unit waiting in reserve, and this unit here on the far left with all those little peasants mixed in doesn't have a banner, doesn't have a champion. It ain't got nothing. If we slide over here from left to right, the next unit of spearmen is carrying 2 ladders. You need 4 guys each, so if they fall below 8, they can only take 1 with them. And we're going to put good King Sam out, or General Sam out, in charge of those guys. We may need to break this video up into 2 parts, depending on how long this goes. For now, let's just take a look. I don't have enough spear figures. I need 60. I've only got about 45. And to get to that mark, I had to press a couple. See the guy with the little pitchfork there? There's one over here. I had to press a couple of peasants in to stand in as spearmen. It's okay. I've got 3 units of spearmen, as you'll see. That means, and they've each got 15. That means I have 1 off table. When I've taken 15 casualties, then I can bring another unit of spears in. Kind of a mobile ready reserve, if you will. From left to right, I'll say this. The Bromans are going with a heavy left-wing strategy. They want to take advantage of their numbers. They're going to flood the left side of the castle as we're looking at it with spear guys. The second unit over here has both a champion and a banner, and our General Samout is going to be accompanying them. They have 2 ladders, as you can see. As I said before, it takes 4 guys to carry a ladder, so if they fall below 8 figures, they're not going to be able to carry the ladder. Our next unit is the 15 sword guys. These are great swordsmen. They have 2 ladders as well. You'll see why once we get rolling. And then we've got our spellcaster. This is High Priest Rickley right there. He's going to play a very important role. And I'm using a cleric figure in 15 millimeters to represent High Priest Rickley today. Finally, as far as the melee guys go in the general assault, this is our unit of spearmen, and they have the log. We'll put it right next to them so we remember that they're dragging that along. It takes 8 guys to carry the log. You can wield it with less than 8, but you do give up a little bit of strength when you're banging on the doors. If everybody dies, the next unit can pick that log up and continue to hammer. We have a mobile unit of 6 knights ready to rush the gate once it is open. Until then, they'll stand back out of the way. This last unit here is 16 archers, and they are aligned, as you can see. They're just lined up in a straight line. They'll march up to where they can start taking shots at the castle wall. Now let's take a look at the undead. They have 15 zombies that they are leaving down behind the gate. Even if, and look at that, the gate even swings open. Even if the gate does get battered down, the first guys through the hole are going to have to deal with these 15 zombies. We have a ready reserve of 8 skeletons. I do have enough skeletons for this. The Vampire Lord, standing right here in the middle, he is going to be flinging spells and dispelling the spells cast by the Broman's Cleric. The key here is that the reserve of 8 guys is led by one of our thralls. I have 2 thralls, one here and one up here on the battlements. And which is which? The guy that's down in the courtyard, that's Korinsky. He's got a sword with an AP of 1, and then the defender has the magic shield that gives him a +1 on his saves. Each section of wall, 1, 2, and then there's 3 and 4 right over here, is defended by 10 skeletons. So when those numbers get fairly low, when one of these units is driven from the wall, then Thrall Korinsky down there is going to be able to launch a counterattack and hopefully push the attackers off the wall. Everybody is standing behind, on the back line, but remember, that's just a representation. This cauldron is controlled by these skeletons right here. If 2 skeletons dump that cauldron, they're not going to be able to counterattack. And likewise over on this side, but that's a lot less likely to happen. Now, one of the questions I have is, if these guys decide, well, and I should also point out, we've got a total of 6 archers up here that are going to be firing down. With the weapon skill or the ballistic skill of 2, they're only going to be hitting on 6s. When our archers fire up at the walls, they're only going to be hitting on 7s. You're going to roll all your hits, and any 6s get re-rolled. They only hit on a 4, 5, or a 6. How to move figures from one stretch of the wall to the next? Well, you really don't. They're going to have to spend a turn moving down. There are some rules if you're adjacent, but if there's any defenders left in the gatehouse, then in order to get these guys over around to the right side of the castle, you're going to have to move them down into the courtyard. That takes a full turn. Skeletons are fairly slow. They're going to be moving down in the courtyard at their normal speed of just 2 inches per turn. I think we'll go ahead and run this fight using the regular movement rates. In other words, move of 4, we'll just move them 4 inches. And when you have a range of 12 inches, it'll be a range. If it's normally a range of 24 inches, we'll call it 24 inches. And that'll speed the game up. And I think things are tight enough as it is. One last little bit of discussion about how we're running this as opposed to if you were running this using your official Games Workshop figures. Ricky Priestley and Tommy Pirinen recommend a 24 by 24 inch gap around a full castle. Back in the day, Games Workshop used to sell a really nifty styrofoam castle. I don't think they sell that anymore. It's classic if you have it in your collection. I'm jealous of you. Since I don't have that, and since I am running 15 millimeter figures, I don't have you're talking about a 6x6 table here. If this is a 2x2 castle, just not in the cards for me. Even if I was running this at half scale, that 24 inches would be 12 inches, which is about where we're at. But I've basically cut my table in half, and I'm just running this side of the fight. I'm running a much smaller scale fight than is recommended in the rule book. Also, there is advice in the rules with respect to if you have I think it's like 1,000 points of defense, you're going to want to bring 3-to-1 odds on offense, 3,000 point army. Because we've done a whole campaign leading up to this point, I haven't bothered with points at all. I think that the Bromans are vastly underpowered. They really don't have enough capabilities to take on this fight. Maybe if they had those cannons, then I kind of think the cannons are a deal breaker, because the cannons can sit back and they can just pound the gates into smithereens, and then you're just basically running a normal scenario. However, there are rules in here for how much your battering ram costs, and for siege towers, which we are not using. I'm really impressed with the way this is laid out. I'm about 95%. I would give them a solid A minus. There's a couple little things that are off the wall, off the wall. But they can be forgiven, because we'll figure that out as we go. And as with last time, what did we do last time? We did a little skirmish. There were some things that didn't quite make sense with undead. I think that may wind up being the case here. Remember that the moon is right, and the undead suffer one less casualty than they ordinarily would, if you remember. And overcoming the morale penalty of you can't close with the skeletons unless you pass a morale check is really going to be a sticking point. I kind of think maybe taking the cannons off the table was, in retrospect, maybe a mistake, because that fear-causing effect and the limited means that the Imperial forces have to deal with that might make this a complete blowout. I haven't played it yet. I'm just all pure speculating, but I'll say this. Even if the Bromans lose this fight, then we call the campaign a success for them. They have set back the plans of Lord Blanc by generations. Now, he can replenish his numbers, obviously, but they've completely obliterated his land and cleansed it, and it's going to take him a long time. So at a minimum, I think the Bromans have already won a narrow victory. Maybe we call it, maybe the best that the vampire can hope for is a draw, because he is immortal and, he can replenish his numbers. But, of course, so can the Bromans. So I think what we're playing for here is, if it's a complete and total victory, Castle Gallagher survives, takes very minimal losses, then the campaign winds up a draw. If the Bromans win the castle and destroy it, but their forces are completely obliterated, then it becomes a narrow victory, and only if the Bromans can take this castle and minimize casualties will we call the campaign an absolute total victory for the Bromans. So that's pretty much where we stand. Let's start moving some figures around. In the official rules of the siege and the scenario, it says the besiegers' objective is to knock down the walls, slay the defenders, and conquer, blah, blah, blah. Special rules, where's the deployment? The besiegers deploy first, which we did. So and I think I kind of glossed over that. The fact that the besiegers are going with a strong left-wing attack on this means that the skeletons, get some light in there, they have put their ready reserve over on the left-hand side. So that those 8 skeletons and the thrall are going to be able to plug any gaps in the holes. Hello, light fixture. Just forgive that. Yeah, we're when it comes to cinematography, we're very good wargamers. Now I'll say this: the attackers deploy first, and I did that, and then the defenders deployed, and then the defenders have the first turn, which I don't really understand. So the defenders have the first turn. They're going to do absolutely nothing. They're out of range of all of the archers. Yeah, I'm glad I thought to check that. These skeleton archers are going to be firing, and as you can see, our forces are about 12 inches away from the gate, meaning weapon skill of 2, hitting on 5s, but they're firing at this spear unit in the center. Long range means they are only hitting on 6s. They're going to get a single hit, and that hit has to check to wound, and on a 4, it will wound, but that fella also gets an armor save, and with a result of a 2, they have removed their first casualty of the day. That's really all that the undead can do here on their first turn. Now it's time... Oh, no, that's not true, because before that, our Vampire Lord can cast a spell. Lord Blank is a level 2 spellcaster, meaning he gets 3 dice. He is going to try to cast, as a Wizard of Death, he's going to try to cast Wind of Death. It's a magic missile spell with a range of up to 24 inches. We're always going to be in range. It causes 2d6 strength 4 hits. And again, he is targeting this unit here in the front. So he's got to roll 3d6 and get an 8 or better. He gets a 10. And now High Priest Rickley is going to try to dispel. He needs to beat that score. And with a result of a 9, 10, 11, he does. So we're done with the magic phase. Then we move on to the second half of turn number 1, where our Bromans basically are all going to move forward. The archers have paused just at about the 12-inch range, so they will be able to fire up the battlements. Now, they are at short, they've moved, so they can't fire this turn. The knights are holding back a little bit to see how these 3 units go. Our leaderless unit, no champion, no banner, they're going to hang back and act as a reserve. They're going to try to scramble up the ladder, or if the gate goes down first, they're in good position to be able to get in through that gate and support this assault. But I think those cauldrons are going to be pretty deadly. Before we get to that, we do need to do a second round of magic. And we have the same situation where a level 2 spellcaster... Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke. High Priest Rickley down here in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. He is a level 4 Wizard of the Heavens, so he gets up to 5 dice. But he's going to cast a little spell called the Storm of Sodom. It's got a... Oh, no, that's only got a 6-inch range. So he's going to have to cast Hammer of God, which is a thunder spell. It does... He's a Wizard of Heavens, so I renamed some of these. For example, we've got our Daily Rosary. On a 5-up, you get D3 rolls. Because he's a good guy, right? So you want to name him after the Catholic feature. So Hammer of God, D6, strength 4 hits. Needs a 9 or better, but he gets 4 dice. And with the double 6s, he automatically succeeds. The only way for the Vampire Lord to dispel this is to roll a pair of 6s himself. And he does not, or a pair of 6s. And since he does not, we're dropping that right here on the, well, he's got to pick one. Do we hit the Vampire Lord or do we hit the skeletons? We're going to hit the skeleton archers in this case. As I said, it's got it's basically anywhere. It's got a 3-inch range and we're hitting that unit. So we do D6 strength 4 hits. So we do 4 strength 4 hits, and with a toughness of 3, I think we're wounding on 3s. And our archers, of course, so that's 4 hits. Let me just double check that. Strength 4 versus toughness of 3 is going to be wounding on 3s, and then saving only on... Well, we're going to give them the extra... How do we do this? This is a magic spell, so they don't get the benefit of the battlements. It's just going to be saving on 6s. 2 saves, so that's only going to eliminate 2 archers, but that may be enough. So 2 archers go bye-bye. And remember that as a Lord of Necromancy, the vampire can cast a spell to summon more skeletons at any time. I think it's like D6, so there will be reinforcements showing up for the Vampire Lord's counts. But I think we're done with this turn. We've done all the shooting. There's no real morale. We don't have to worry about that, so let's move on. Magic comes before missile. We'll cast that same spell, rolling 4 dice to see if we are successful. We beat the number that we needed with a total score of 14. We don't want to roll snake eyes, so we're going to roll... Do we roll all 5? Let's roll all 5. What's the worst that could happen? That is dispelled. So our Vampire Lord is in trouble because he did not count on the strength of the King of Kings as channeled through High Priest Rickley here. We do have 4 arrow shots. Now, as I said before, the archers are going to have to choose between dumping hot oil and shooting. They're going to go ahead and take the shots again at this lead element, and they're going to get a total of 0 hits, even at short range when they're hitting on 5s. That's going to end the undead turn. Now the Bromans get to go, and as usual, we are going to move them first. They're all going to move into contact with the walls, and I think that's, at least these 3 units are. The archers won't move, and I don't think we're going to bring our knights, these guys here in the back. We're not going to bring them up either, but we will bring this unit kind of over to the side. The rules say it doesn't cost any movement to set the ladders or to climb the ladders. I think that's a little weird. Our units were about 6 inches away from the wall. I'm going to dock them to 2 points. We're not going to do any melee over here on this turn. Instead, we're going to save that for next turn when they have their full charge movement. Again, you can't really charge things you can't see, so I class this as, look, we're in contact. We're going to give the skeletons a chance with these cauldrons, but things get a little complicated on that score because we have to do, well, and again, we also have to worry about the morale rules, particularly with respect to fear-causing units. But that might not be such a big deal, because High Priest Rickley here on the magic phase is going to cast a spell that will negate, it turns all of your leadership checks For any figure within 6 inches or any unit within 6 inches, it automatically succeeds. And with the double sixes, again, this 2 doesn't really matter. It's going to be an automatic success unless our vampire can roll a pair of boxcars of his own. He does not. All right, that's actually from the Lore of Light. You need an 8 up, and it's all units within 12 inches. Ignore all psychology effects. It remains in place until it is dispelled. And in other words, he's going to get a check on every single turn from here on in the magic phase to see if he can dispel that, because that is such a powerful spell that it negates our fear-causing unit. That means we can turn our attention to the only other dice rolls we have this turn, and that's going to be these archers down here. There are 12 of them in the front line. I've got 4 kind of spare units back here, excess casualties that will take off if they get targeted by anything. And, we may even run them up to eat some hot oil just to save the guys at the gate. Check that. I think we're going to do our first attack on the gate. These guys were close enough, and they're already on the ground. I think they charged into contact with that gate. However, yeah, I think so. We're going to make our first attack, but let's get through the. I get a little excited. I get a little ahead of myself. You guys know how it is. The trees. Oh, the archers would have lined up 16 deep, but this tree is in the way. I do have a couple of trees and these skull piles. All they do is break up formations. You can't move through those. You got to move around them. They don't block line of sight, but they do block movement. And really, they're wide enough and rare enough that all they do, like I said, is break up formations. I also said that the archers only hit on 6s. With no 6s, they get no hits, and that's unfortunate. We really wanted to take off at least one of these hot pots, because on the next turn, when it is time for the melee for the skeletons, it's not going to go good for our attackers. But that's for next turn. For this turn, we've got a group of guys at the base of the walls. They're not in position to assault the battlements, but these guys down here with the log are in position to assault the gatehouse. And to do that, you have to take a look. Let's just take a look at the rules real quick. We're going to roll a 2d6. When you're shooting a cannon, you make your 2-hit roll as normal. But for this kind of melee attack, you do damage based on how many guys are wielding the log. We've got 8 guys, and 8's the maximum. And we're going to roll a 2d6 on this chart right here. The gate is reinforced with metal, so we're at -1, meaning we roll a 2d6. We're going to add 7, and if we get a 15, the gate breaks. Instead, we get just a 5. Adding the 7 gives us a result of a 12, and the gate holds. Crack. The gate splinters. Add +1 to further rolls on this chart. Meaning next turn in the melee phase, and I'm assuming that's the melee phase for the undead, we'll get to take a second crack at the gate, and this time we'll be at +8 instead of +7 to the roll. When we get to the missile phase, the undead will be able to take advantage of these cauldrons. Since it's the magic phase, we're going to try to cast that same thunderous death spell on this unit right here. The Lord Blank casts his spell, hoping for a pair of 6s. He doesn't get it, but he does get a total of 15, and that may be a little hard to beat. I'm assuming that we can dispel, even though our automatic passing our Lord's blessing that allows the automatic passing of any fear tests is still in effect. Dispelling is not casting a spell, and with the pair of 6s, it's a 16. We succeed regardless. That's really the only way. We're hoping that the Vampire Lord can get boxcars, and then the High Priest does not. That's really the only way we're going to get any magic off. So I really thought that the magic was going to go more in the favor of the undead, but apparently not. Now it's time for shooting, and we have 2 archers right here with a pot of boiling oil, and that oil is going to fall on the guys attacking the gatehouse. This pot we will direct towards this unit, and then we have a third pot right over here that will fall on that unit. Now in each case, they're close enough, they're going to hit 9 guys, and we're going to roll 9d6. And for every 6 that we roll, this is a wound check. So the only way to not be wounded by the boiling oil is to roll a 1. Now I've got enough room to roll the dice. I'm going to roll, and I'm going to go from right So from left to right, as you look at it on the screen, we get a single 1, 2, so 7 of these guys go down. And I'm just going to go ahead and roll all 3, and then we will remove the casualties. So 7, and the guys with the great swords, I'll re-roll that one. We get 2 successful saves. The wound roll fails on 2. So 7, 7, and then over here we're going to lose another. We roll 3, so only 6 are going to fall from here. And that's really important because removing these 6 casualties leaves us 2, 4, 6 with just 8 guys, so we're still going to be able to melee with that log using all 8 of our guys. To remind myself, it takes a full turn to refill these boiling cauldrons. I've flipped them over, at least the 3 that have been triggered. Now it is time for movement. Our spellcaster is going to slide over to the side so that this unit of spearmen can assault the walls. We'll bring our knights up here. They are now prepared to charge. That is just 7 inches of movement, and if they march, we can even broaden that by 1. We're going to make that a 4 wide front. That takes us to archery phase, and once again, we've got our 12 archers that are capable of firing, and they're going to fire at the archers up on the wall, hitting on 6s only. They normally hit on 4s. They're at short range, but because of the battlements, they only hit on 6s, and as you can see, they wound up getting 4 hits this time, and those 4 hits will, again, wound on 4s. They get a pair of wounds, and the archers will save on 6s. So 1 save. So all of that shooting does eliminate 1 archer, which will be enough to negate that cauldron right there. Does magic come before shooting? Yeah, it does. I probably should have cast, but we're not casting a spell. We can try to dispel with, well, now this is interesting. Does a spell in effect? Does he get a dispel check and we're hoping for boxcars to turn it off? Well, if we needed boxcars, we didn't get it. So nothing happens in the magic phase this turn. The automatically passes all checks is valid. However, I think he is, now that he's moved over to here, I think High Priest Rickley has put himself in danger of being shot by the arrows. But up until now, there have been sufficient units in front of him that he's kind of getting lost in the shuffle. But we may wind up taking a couple of pot shots at him, depending on how things go. Now, as far as movement goes, these 2 units did assault the walls there. So let's take a look at what that means. Before I do, let's check with the gate. We automatically hit on melee. We are at +8 for our strength. Oh, plus an extra 1 because last turn we damaged it. Total of +9. Oh, no, total of 8 because the gate is metal reinforced. We roll our 2d6. We get a 6 + 8, which is a 14. Crunch, which is not the 15 that we need to open it up. We are at an additional +2, though. We've done more damage to what's behind that gate. On the next turn, we're going to be at a total of +3 to our roll, but it's a good bet we might lose some more of our guys before then. Turning our attention to the walls. As soon as a unit is within base contact of the wall, it can erect its ladders. 1 model per ladder may move onto the ramparts at the start of the close combat phase. We're going to pick our High General Sam out. We are going full Walls of Jerusalem with him. He's climbing that ladder. I have a champion down here. Remember, with the extra attack, he's going to move up. And then over here, we're going to bring our biggest boys up. Our captain versus thrall is going to be bonkers. And then I'm bringing 1 more two-handed sword, a great swordsman to the top of the wall. We treat this the way we would treat any other melee combat. However, we've got a unit of swordsmen and spearmen of whom only these 4 models can make attacks, and they attack last. So we got a little bit of complicated here. We've got a couple of spear skeletons that are attacking a champion, and they're going to attack first. Because they're attacking a champion, they're going to be hitting on 4s, and with a 3 and a 1, they miss. Then I've got 3 spear attacks on a weapon skill 3 swordsman, and I need to declare these individually because if I just roll 5 dice and I get 1 casualty, I need to know who it is against. In this case, we score a whopping 3 hits against that spearman, and of those 3 hits, 1 of them will wound, and then we roll for our save, and it fails. So the swordsman will be classed as a casualty, And I guess I'll put my casualties over here for the purposes. And what's worse is he doesn't get to attack. So for the purposes of this combat, the Bromans are already down by 1. Then I've got a total of 3 attacks on General Samout. Now this is weapon skill 2 for the Spearman versus weapon skill of 6 for General Samout, meaning that we're only going to be hitting on, I think it's 6s. Let me grab my, let me just double check that. I don't want to give you guys any reason to second guess me here. The 2 hit with a weapon skill of 2 going up against a weapon skill of 6. They're going to be hitting on 5s, actually. Oh, yeah, that's right. So we get 2 hits on the general. And of those 2 hits, 1 will be a wounding hit. And just the general, I guess he left his horse below, but he has a total bonus of, he's got the heavy armor and the shield, so he saves on 4 up. He does not take any wounds. And then we have one last fight between our thrall, and we've got 2 skeletons. So I will be rolling a blue die for the thrall's attack. And, oh, I'm sorry. The Iron Thrall has 3 attacks. So I'm going to be rolling 3 blue dice for our thrall and 2 for his backup. And with a weapon skill of 5 versus 5, he's only going to be hitting on 4s. So we only got a single hit. That might be enough, though. Captain Thorn is going to take a wound on a 4 and save on a, what is he armed with? Now, he's got heavy armor and a shield, so he saves on a 4 up. He doesn't take any wounds. He also has 2 wounds, so he's got that going for him. The Bromans have a very complicated attack sequence. We're going to take it left to right, although this is still just one combat. Our champion gets 2 attacks, hitting on 6s. He gets a single hit, and with that hit, he wounds with a 6, and then he is going to fail his save. So the skeleton becomes the first casualty. Now our general is going to roll. Now he's got attack. He's got 5 attacks plus a magic sword, which gives him an extra attack. And so again, he's only hitting on 6s. We get the 1 hit. Now that 1 hit is going to be at a total strength of 6 versus a skeleton's toughness of 3. And 6 versus 3 means we are wounding on anything but a 1. That is our second skeleton, and the Bromans have already won this combat. Let's see if Captain Thorn can add an additional wound. Now, this gets a little bit complicated. He's got a weapon skill of 5 versus the Thrall's weapon skill of 5. We're still only hitting on 6s. And, you know, it's just as well. We didn't get any 6s, so no hits there because we have, like, AP of 2, but he's got a magic shield of +1, so the whole thing just gets really complicated. What's not complicated is the only modifiers you have to the melee results in this situation are the presence of the general. These banners, way down below, don't make a difference. The musicians, in the case of Fatai, don't make a difference. In other words, we've got a total score of 3 to 1, and the Bromans have won by 2. Normally, the skeletons would lose 2 figures, but the moon is right. Remember, that was our random event. So instead of losing 2, they're just going to lose 1 extra figure. That is 3 figures down, but they have won the combat. That means, well, the rules don't really say, yeah, you won the combat. And in a normal situation, if our Bromans were attacking elves, then the elves would make a melee check. And if they failed, then they would run away. And we would have, our unit would own the castle walls. What do you do in a situation like this? What is your follow-up move? And the way I'm going to handle this is because our guys attacked. Basically, I think this, but so now let's just think about this for a second. If we have to wait until the next turn to send 2 more guys up the wall and 2 more guys up the wall, then the only real difference is that our attackers are no longer hitting only on 6s. They will be hitting on their normal profiles. And anybody that gets to the top of the wall, likewise, will be hitting on their normal profiles. So essentially, the way I'm going to run this is that our turn is over. The wall has been seized, and now it is the undead's turn. During the magic phase, we try to dispel the automatic passage of the, even if that's a 6, automatic passage of the psychology rules. He fails. Now we have a choice to make. It takes 2 figures to reset a cauldron. Do we bring our 3 archers over here and they try to shoot the High Priest Rickley? I'm going to check his profile here real quick. He has a total of 3 wounds. They would have to do 3 wounding hits. Instead, I think because this is a siege, what we'll do is we'll reset the cauldron for next turn. And that leaves us with 1 arrow shot left. We're just going to take 1 shot at him. Oh, this is a casualty. And with a 3, we will miss. But that way we have the option of dumping that cauldron next turn. We're done with magic. We're done with missile fire for the undead. That means we go on to melee. And now because our 3 guys are at the top of the wall, we have to look at initiative scores. Nobody has, well, he has a great weapon, so General Samout will attack last. But otherwise, if we look at initiative scores, the guys with the highest initiative, the Iron Thrall has an initiative of 6. He's going to attack Captain Thorn first. Then Captain Thorn will attack back. Our Iron Thrall has a total attack score of 3, and 5 on 5, he's going to be hitting on 4s. He gets nothing. So Captain Thorn, he attacks back, and he gets a single hit on a guy. But because he has that sword, no, he, what is he? Oh, he's got the Sword of Might, so that's a +1 to his strength. Oh, that's why he has a strength of 5. Going up against a toughness of 4 will lead to strength of 5, toughness 4, wounding on a 3, and we get a 5, so we get the wound. But with the magic shield, the Thrall is going to be saving on, he's got heavy armor, and the shield +1, so he's going to be saving on 5, 4, 3. With the AP of 2, he's going to be back to saving on a 5. And he makes his save, so nothing doing there. Then we have General Samout attacks last. We've done our champion. So the remaining skeletons, of which there are 5, will make their attacks. And this time we have to, we're going to pull 1 skeleton over here. This time we have to take a look. They're going to be hitting on, in this case, 2 versus a weapon skill of 3. That would be hitting on 5s. Oh, it's just one of them. So we got 1 attack over here, which is a hit, wounding on, we'll call it a 6, and then saving on a 1, our champion has fallen. So that's our first casualty. Then we've got 2 over here attacking, and let's break it up to make it a little more even. I'm going to bring a skeleton over here. So it's going to be 3 on the general and 3 on the captain. And I think in both cases, it's going to be hitting on 3s. The 5s and 6s, a 2 attacking 5s and 6s. Oh, they're going to be hitting on 5s. We've got a total of, what did I say? It's going to be 3 on the general. That's 1 hit on the general. And that's going to be a miss on the wound. We've got 3 attacks on the captain. So that'll be 1 hit. And will it wound with a 3? No, it will not. Now it's time for the general to attack back with his big hoopty. And attacking his weapon skill of 6 versus weapon defender skill of 2 means he's only hitting on 3s, but he got a couple of hits. He's a pretty strong guy. He's got a strength of 4. Oh, he's got 1 extra. He's got 6 attacks. I think I might have only rolled 5. But he does have the +2 strength. So he is actually going to be attacking with a strength of 6. Anything but a 1. I think we'll call that a 3. He's going to do 2 wounding hits, which will save on 6s only. And we get a 1 and a 6. So that's going to be enough to kill just 1 guy, and we'll move him over. So now it's still back to 3 on 1. Now bear in mind, our final tally is 1 to 1. But with the king at the top, The Bromans win by 1. The Bromans have won this, but not by enough to do any additional casualties. So we remove the casualties, and effectively what's happened here is that the Bromans are not thrown from the walls, so that when we move on to the next round, where our magic goes, and oops, there's no dispelling now. Boy, I knocked over a lot of guys. It's really fiddly. That's the one downside of working with these tiny little figures. And on the next turn, the pot of boiling oil can dump back onto this unit with the log ram. It's all right. We're okay. We have a total of 10 dice attacking the crown of the hill, hitting on 6s only. And we get a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 on those archers up at the top. And the archers now are going to be wounded on 4s or better. They only get 1 wound, and those archers will save on a 6. And we'll call that a 2, and that means 1 more archer is gone, leaving just enough to dump that oil next turn. Now we move on to melee. And, you know, come to think of it, I don't know if I rolled for did I remember to roll for this last turn? We're at +3. We've got 8 guys. This is going to be a strength 10, 2d6 plus 10. We just need a 5. With a result of a 20, Katie bar the door, we're coming in. No, wait, it's Kate. The door is unbarred. I guess it didn't really work there. Crush. The gate is utterly destroyed. The way to the fortress is now open. And this is at the start of the melee. So I can pull this log out of here, and I can even, the nice thing about this little play set is I can remove this door. But the fight is not over, because our guys have only managed to crack the door open. They still have to get through those zombies. Hey, look, I dropped another skeleton spear down here. Wake up, fella. There's a battle going on. Don't you know that? And during the movement phase, we can now bring up an additional 1, 2, and I'm going to keep our champions fighting here. Our 2 captains are fighting, and we've got some reinforcements to help out. So 2 of these guys can get to the top, and 2 of these guys can get to the top as well. And that's going to take some of the pressure off of our king. Although, so this is one of the areas where I get confused. Does this unit just stand around? There are rules for moving them in, but I think about the only thing we can do is we can lend their weight, and maybe we have this spearman fighting against one of the elements of this unit, and now we can factor this unit in to our combat results. We can fight this, and we'll just see what happens, okay? Again, in a normal scenario, your defenders would be pushed off the wall. They would run. Well, would they run? No, they don't, because they have nowhere to run to. They're literally practicing the castle doctrine. But hey, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and run this fight as it is. We've got 1 fight here and 1 fight here, and because we've seized the ramparts, the undead don't go first. We have to do this in order of initiative, which means, once again, General Samout and Dane will attack first. I'm going to do the attackers first. The general attacks, and he's got 2 skeletons that are on top of him. And he doesn't hit on 6s now. He hits on his normal amount. He gets a total of 5 hits against those guys. With his crazy bonkers strength, he's wounding on 3s. He gets 4 wounding hits, and they are saving on 6s. And even with a pair of boxcars, these 2 skeletons are going to be driven from the ramparts. And then this captain is going to attack, and he's got 3 attacks hitting on 4s, and he's going to get 2 hits against Captain Thorn, and Captain Thorn is going to have to eat, oh boy, he's going to be wounding on 3s, so that's 1 wound. With AP2, he's only going to be saving on 6s. He does not save, so the captain takes the first of his 2 wounds, but he does live to fight another day, and he gets to follow up with 3 attacks of his own, again hitting on 4s, and again wounding on 3s, 2 wounding hits, and again saving on 5s is going to be 2 wounds, puts Thrall Dane out of the fight. Oh, I should put him down here because that is now 4 wounding hits. I could back off a little here so you can see that. Here's our pile o' dead. It's a total of 4 wounding hits for the undead. The general, and now, so he's attacked. Now we have this one last swordman ready to go. He is he's a pretty tough guy. He's hitting on a 4. Oh, I've got 2 of them up there now, don't I? So let me roll another one. So 4 and a 5, that's 2 wounding hits. These are strength 5 hits against toughness 3 guys. Strength 5, toughness 3, wounding on 2s. That's 2 more wounds. And then we're going to be saving on 6s. And we get 1. These skeletons have been saving like crazy. Tough guys. We still have not lost enough spearmen on the human side to bring in that force of reserves. That's the end of the fight, and with a total casualty... Oh, I pulled one down. So this is a total of 5 wounding hits. And we haven't even rolled for these 2 guys yet. Did we? Or did we start with those guys? I don't remember. It's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wounding hits. And then there's only 3 skeletons left in this unit. So those guys are going to go away. And again, I think what happens now is that we can consolidate up there, but remember, we've got this... Let's just be clear. This is the end of the turn, okay? Without the follow-up moves, things get complicated for the Bromans. They have now seized the ramparts, but we're going to have to, commit to sending these 4 guys up next turn. Again, you only move up the ladders, it's just kind of a trickle, which makes sense, but what do we do with respect to... I think we turn... These guys will start moving in this direction, and, they can attack the skeletons, but that would have to be on their next turn. We've now cracked the gates open, and I think the outcome is still in more doubt than you realize, because we have reinforcements in the form of a thrall with his unit ready to strike back up at the ramparts to try and retrieve those. We have an awful lot of zombies in there that are waiting to charge against these attackers, some of whom seem to have gotten a little turned around in the confusion. The castle is that way, guys. And that's a fairly small unit, but they are backed by these knights. And if our big boy, if our zombie lord gets into the fight, things could change a lot faster than you realize. So we're going to call it quits right here. This is part 1. The ramparts have been seized. If General Samau were to die, that could change things as well. Tune in to our next episode where we will pick the action up right where we left off with the final assault on Castle Gallagher.